morning. Good morning. Good morning. What you do when you have a preschooler. When they're toddler age, it's a little bit harder. We spent a lot of time when they were toddlers putting them in the tub while we were doing school, or just having them in the high chair and making sure they had plenty of snacks when we were during the hardest parts of school. And then we did do some things during that. But when they're preschoolers, so I'm talking like 3, 4, 4 or 5, it's a little bit harder. So I'm just going to share with you what we've done with Soraya. And most of this we sort of implemented when she was 3.5, 4, and then I really did extra planning for her last year because she will just be in K1 this fall. So I really needed something I needed to put together something for her, and I really think that that's where a lot of moms probably fail a bit, is that they don't really plan for that child. And I knew that because she was not the oldest, she was the youngest, she really needed something to do. And when you have that dynamic where they're the youngest child, they want to do what the big kids are doing. So you have to give them something. And, in Waldorf, of course, there's nothing before first grade. And so you could do nothing for kindergarten, nothing for preschool, and you'd be just fine. I think you'd be golden. But when you have older kids, then you have these younger ones that are kind of like, me, pick me, pick me. So I sort of came up with something very, very simple for Soraya. And I will actually post the plans on the thread here when we're done. But I'm just going to quickly go through some of the things that we do. So I always do her first. When I do her first, she gets that little bit of me, and it sort of carries her then for the rest of the lessons. So, after we've done our morning devotional and we've gone on our walk and we come back, usually I send the bigger kids to go and do some reading and or practice something on their own. And then Soraya and I do her circle. If I've got a bigger kid that wants to join us in circle, they're always totally welcome. By the time they're about 9, they're like, I don't want to do circle anymore. So I always give them the option. My oldest at home, my 15-year-old Ellie, she'd be like, I love circle. So of course she'll come and do circle with us if she's invited. But I usually do Soraya's circle first, and she loves that. In fact, one of her only criticisms of the days that Daddy teaches are that he needs to learn the songs better. So my poor husband is working on that. But it's great because I get her out of the way, and she gets the part of me that she needs. We probably spend about 30 minutes or so together, 30, 40 minutes, depending on, what we're doing. But we get that in together. I also will sort of organically all the time have her cooking with me, have her baking with me. And that sort of, it's because of the differences in the ages in my house. When I had 3 that were all lumped together, we had a baking day. And now that we have sort of scattered ages, because there's 5 years between her and Sam and 5 years between Sam and Ellie, I really just pull Soraya in to do the baking with me when it arises. So, which is just about every day. So I don't even include that as part of her lesson because of the fact that we're just organically sort of doing things all the time. But I do sort of put together for her, when I put it together at the beginning of the year or last summer for the big kids, I looked at sort of what we were doing for the big kids, and I also looked at what we were doing for our co-op, because in our co-op we're doing field trips and things like that. So I wanted as much as possible for what I was doing with Soraya to sort of coordinate with that, so that we didn't have too many big ideas going on. So like for instance, for the month of May at our co-op, we are focused on, we're finishing up farming, because we did farming in April, and in May we're going to be picking blueberries together as a group. So we've been doing a lot of, I've got a lot of things on the plan for May, about blueberries. So we've got, I'll just read to you what I've got on my list for her this week. Peter in Blueberry Land, that was actually last week. This week we have, and that's by Elsa Vescow. This week we have the Flower Festival, because we're going to be going to the Botanical Gardens. And then we also have, that's this week. And then next week we have When the Sun Rose, and we're going to be painting rainbows together. And then week 4 we'll do the 3 Billy Goats craft. And so as much as I can, I try to tie it into what we're doing at co-op. If I can't, then, you know, we just pull in some great books and we just focus on one story a week. You could focus on one story a month, and that would be awesome. If you have a child that's sort of balking a little bit at that, then definitely change it up, but keep the story simple, because remember, the elements for a 3-year-old should be extremely simple. The elements for a 4-year-old can be a little more detailed. There's a great article by Joan Allman on choosing fairy tales that's on the Waldorf Online Library. So I would definitely suggest that. If you can't find it, drop me a note. Just do a Google search, Joan Allman, choosing fairy tales, and it should come up. It's, I think, probably the first in the search result. If you can't find it, let me know, and I will link it to you. But it's really good for helping you understand sort of the stages that they need to go through in complexity. So the fairy tales that you would tell a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old are much different than you would tell a 6-year-old that's going on 7 and into 1st grade. So as far as complexity goes. So I try to keep things fairly simple. And when they're really small, there might be even pages, if she were 3 this year, there might even be pages in the Peter and Blueberry Land book that I would absolutely skip over, or gloss over, or not read the whole thing, or even make up something a little more simple than what's going on in the book. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to alter things just because it's written that way. And you know, if you've got a choleric mind like me, you have to sort of bend it a little bit, because you just kind of want to do it exactly the way it's written. But you have to bend it, and you have to sort of do what's right for your child. So we sort of focus on that. And if I get that done first thing, then she is generally more than happy to play. But I also have a few other things sort of in my arsenal here that I always keep around for her. So she always has, she has a little IKEA desk in her space, and on it she's got some art supplies. I always give her good art supplies that are just hers, and they're usually hand-me-downs from the big kids, where I try to get the big kids a new set of crayons every couple of years, so I will always get sort of what's left, and she gets really excited about that. Oh no, I get Sam's crayons. But I sort of keep those, and I'm going to sort of pan down to that. I keep those in a spot on her desk. So she's got this basket here. You can see the basket, and it's got crayons and pencils and scissors and things that she needs that she's got access to all the time. And I'm not going to promise that that's not going to cause problems if you have really rowdy 4-year-olds. When my big boys were little and we sort of employed this, we always talked about, okay, so we need to be nice to our crayons and our pencils so that we have them. And when we, that way if they break, gosh, then we won't have them. And so I think in the time that my big boys were little, I think we broke maybe like 3 total, and like 2 pencils were maybe run over by a bike because somehow they were outside, but not like, we don't go around breaking a lot of things because we sort of talk about them. We talk about how we keep our supplies nice, and that's how I'm not afraid to sort of give them nice things and give them good supplies, because we talk about it, and they hold them with reverence, and they hold them with a lot different reverence than they would hold those crayons that you get from a restaurant that they cart home with them like all the time ad nauseum. I don't know what's up with that. Anyway, the other thing that I sort of have in my arsenal is this. I'm going to hold it up here. This is sort of a palette of paints. And these are the Stockware ones. You can start off with the less expensive ones for sure. You could get those really cheaply at any big box store. But I'm going to tell you why I like these. So they're a mess, and what I love about them is that she never has all these colors. They're just in here right now so that you can see all the colors that they come with. Usually she has red, blue, and yellow. And of course the reason for that is because I want her to sort of experience pure color as much as possible. So occasionally I'll let her have sort of the secondary colors, and that's what's in here now. In here now we've got green and orange, but usually she's just got sort of red, blue, and yellow. And I'm just going to show you, so you can pop them out. And what I love about the fact that you can pop them out is you can also rebuy colors individually, so that you've just got to purchase more red. And I think Pamela at Meadow Street Naturals can probably hook you up with that if you if you've got colors that you're out of. I'm sure, I know she can order them that way, so I'm sure that she would be happy to help you with something like that. This one runs about, I want to say it runs about $20. And I know that sounds like a lot, but we've had this paint palette, this one is going on year 2, and the one before that lasted probably 2 or 3 years. More detailed work these days as a 9th grader, so she'll grab this in a finer tipped paintbrush. That was the word I was looking for. And she'll use these for some of the things that she's working on. So I really like having those around. And sort of with that, Soraya's got access to a big fat paintbrush that I don't have to get down. She has, we have these cups by Melissa and Doug that are, and if you Google them, you'll find them. They're like no spill paint cups, and they come in a pack of 3. And we just use them for water because we don't put paint in them. But they're awesome because they're about this tall, and you only fill the water to this much, and then they have this great screw-on lid, and then it doesn't tip over. Like if it tips over, it doesn't spill, and so it's really nice because Soraya knows how full to fill it. She gets her own water, she puts the lid on, and so she can paint. At this age, it's usually just computer paper, and I have to limit it. I have to go, you can have 5 paintings today, because otherwise it would be crazy all over. One day I didn't even limit her, and she painted like 20 of the same elephant that was in her head in all different colors, and they were all over my kitchen floor, and I was like, crap, what am I going to do with all these elephants? So I definitely limit it to like 5 a day, and usually I'll just put like 5 sheets of paper on her little desk, and that way if it strikes that she wants to do that, then she'll paint, and if she doesn't, they're there for the next day. So she really, between just art supplies by themselves, she's usually pretty busy. I also she has her own main lesson book, and that's just because she wants to do it again what the big kids are doing, and so it's super helpful. One thing I do have to remind her regularly is, okay, we're not going to color in the whole book today. We're just going to color in 3 pages today, and so then she'll grab her sketchbook, which she can color as much as she wants. I also buy, because it's cheaper and in my head better for the environment, I just buy newsprint paper, and you can buy that in a ream or sort of bound. If you have a Dick Blick's near you, go there. Oh my gosh, I could spend hours at Blick's. Love that place. If not, they have a website. I think it's just Blick's. It's maybe dickblick.com. So we get a lot of supplies from there, but we didn't have that for a long time. So if you've got Hobby Lobby or even Michael's, you can go and buy reams of newsprint there, and that sort of makes it easy, because the little ones, they love art, and they often love to waste paper, and so I get sort of stressed out, like my environmentalist heart gets stressed out a little bit about that. So we also actually employ this, and I plan it out. So, one day I'm okay, like it depends on, so if she paints and she uses all 5 of her sheets of paper that day, then I'm like, okay, well, let's do something else after that, rather than, oh, let's paint and draw 10 drawings and go through your main lesson book all in one day, because she totally would. She's that she loves to draw, she loves art. She loves it. It's kind of crazy. Mom, I'm not drawing on my bed, I'm making art. I'm like, stop. But so I sort of employ this too, and it's not very Waldorfy at all, but I do use it. It's the Magnadoodle, and we use it especially because if we didn't, she would draw on everything. She would draw on every piece of scrap of paper. Of course, unless it had writing on one side, and then she's too good to use the other side. We go through that a lot too. But you know, I try to have situations for her so that she is constantly being able to feed that, and you know, I know there's this thought that there shouldn't be coloring books, and so we actually don't utilize them at home, but I do put them in the church bag. I do put them in, you know, I do take them with us if we're going to, say, be sitting at a doctor's office or something like that. So they're a treat more than anything, and they're not part of her mainstay. And I do think that the fact that she doesn't have that absolutely reflects in her creativity, and because she will just draw and draw and draw, where I've seen if kids get into a coloring book, they won't draw. So you know, if you've got that dynamic and you're trying to wean them off, you know, start with good art supplies, start with having painting things available to them all the time, start with sort of some of the things that we talked about. And I don't give her any promptings at this age about, oh, let's draw this story or anything like that. She will often just draw from it because she hears me sort of talking to the big kids about, we're going to draw from this today. So she will often do that. She'll often also draw from stories that weren't hers, and at this point it's okay. So like this year, Sam's doing Old Testament, and I'm okay with that, and Steiner would have been okay with that too, because it is part of our religion, so there's stories that she hears all the time, and so that's where the difference is. If we were covering, say, Norse myth or even Greek mythology, then I would do a little more work to try to get her busy and occupied with something else before Sam and I did our lesson. And but in general, she's just sort of hanging out with us. And we have this big table. This table seats, well, it has 2 leaves. So when both leaves are in it, because you know, remember I got 5 kids. When both leaves are in it, it seats 8. And because I've only got 3 at home right now, right now we're only seating 6, and because there's 5 of us. And so having a big table is super helpful. And for a lot of years, I didn't have a big table. For a lot of years, I just had crappy tables. And like, I can remember when my big kids were little, I wanted a big table so bad, and I could not afford one. And I found somebody giving away one of those big, long 8-foot conference tables, and that was our kitchen table for a long time. Because it fit everybody, and I could put a tablecloth on it, and it didn't feel like we were slumming it. But now I finally have this table. Now I got to tell you, this table is regularly like a $300 table at IKEA, and it was in the as-is, so it's got some scratches on it. I think we got it for $100, and when we first moved to San Diego, because we came here with a 10-foot truck and no furniture, so we had to rebuy everything, and we sort of went for what we could find in as-is at IKEA. And so this table has been a godsend. I totally think that it was there waiting for me. When I got there that day, I thought, I've never seen this table in as-is before. So, you know, having a big table is super helpful so that you can sort of spread out for school. And I usually have all 3 of them here doing something that they're working on. And so I thought I would talk about that a little bit more next week, sort of talk about you know, schooling several children and how the dynamic actually looks for school all year round. And the reason why we do that is because we have there's so much to cover, especially when you're schooling several children, that I would rather take bits here and there, especially now that we live in San Diego. So if you live in a town that's like a touristy town, like when people come here, I'm like, go home. And I used to be a tourist, and so now I totally get it. But when we have spring break, you almost can't drive here and you can't go to a lot of museums because it's crazy overrun with people. And so we tend to school during those breaks, and then take breaks at other times. We probably take 1 to 2 days a month where we just go and we do a day trip up north and just have a good time, or we're at the beach all day. And so we do that throughout the school year, and then we sort of do some things in the summer. So like for instance, Ellie's in 9th grade. We're going to do an art history block this summer. And Eric almost had a minor in that. He's got a lot of credits in that, so he's going to be working on that. And we're going to do a block on Moby Dick. But she's going to be in 10th grade in the fall. So I wanted some things this summer that would, sort of really speak to her as the almost 16-year-old that she is. Oh my gosh, she's getting a driver's license like soon. It's kind of scary. Excuse me. Somebody asked a question. Can you talk about starting school with one? I also have a younger toddler. How much should I try to include the 18-month-old? So I talked about toddlers at the very beginning. And so what I did when Sam was a toddler, and when Soraya was a toddler, we were fortunate to live, when we were in that house, we lived where everything was sort of all in one level. And so I could put my toddler in the tub and still not be too far from the kitchen table. Excuse me, and that was really helpful. We did a lot of baths during the day because they could sit in there and play for hours. So it's just a matter of having good tub toys. And so that really helped when I was working with older ones. But where you've got a toddler and a 5-year-old, by the time your 5-year-old is really ready for school, so you're looking at 2 years from now, then, or probably not this fall, but maybe the fall after. I don't know when your 5-year-old's birthday is, but you're going to have that 18-month-old is going to be 3 or 4. So the things that I'm talking about will absolutely apply at that point in time. But when you've got a toddler, I think that the easiest thing with toddlers is to let them play. We had a sand and water table in the kitchen. It was quite messy, but it worked. We had it in the kitchen when it was colder, and then we had it outside the sliding glass door when it was warmer. And so Soraya could be there and sort of be playing there and make a big mess and while we did schoolwork. And so you have to sort of be okay with mess when you have toddlers around, if you haven't already guessed that. And so save your needing to have a clean house thing, like totally clean, for when they're older. My house is pretty clean right now, but that's because I got big kids really helping. But I would definitely decide where your comfort level is with that, and definitely do some things like baths during lesson time, and I would do sensory play if possible, and making sure that, like, I tried to save the snack time for the toddler for when we were doing lessons, because they could sit in the high chair and eat while we were doing our lessons together, and that was super helpful. So as far as including them and what you're doing with your 5-year-old, I wouldn't include them as far as anything but circle time, but for sure, find ways like I've been mentioning to just sort of bring them all together so that they can do, your bigger child can do lessons. But again, you've got a toddler and a 5-year-old, you don't have to worry about that really for 2 years. So once you do have to worry about it, some of the other things that I said will apply. And I get it. I have 5, and so there was a time when I had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and so I had 2 under first grade, and that was quite fun. It was interesting for sure. And so a lot of the tricks that I use now, I was using then as well. And so it's really good if you can get the younger 2 to play together, and we could do that for short increments of time. Like I knew that Jacob and Ellie could play together when I was working with Harry, because Harry was in first grade and there was not a ton that needed to be done, and so they could play together while I was working with him, and that usually was about the span of time that they could go without hurting each other, about 30 minutes. And so that way I could work with Harry. Thanks. Have a great day.